Most people think power means being loud, feared, or obeyed. But Iqbal would say, if you cannot command yourself, you have no real power at all. True power is silent. It is built slowly, through integrity, restraint, and the courage to obey your own conscience, even when no one is watching. This episode explores Iqbal's vision of power as inner authority, not domination. Power is not something we grab from the outside, but something that accumulates inside us. When our actions, values, and conscience stay aligned over time, those who rule themselves do not need to shout. Their presence itself becomes influence. Today, we continue our 50-part journey through Khudi, The Secret of the Self by Allama Iqbal. This is episode 21. In this reflection, we ask a difficult question. Are we seeking power to control others, or to first command ourselves? Let the idea of inner authority sink into your mind and your heart as we walk through Iqbal's philosophy of power. Power is not taken. It is accumulated quietly, gradually, through coherence. Most people misunderstand power. They associate it with control, with loud assertion, with visible dominance. But domination is compensation. Real power requires no announcement. The self that lacks inner authority tries to impose itself outwardly. The self that possesses authority rarely needs force. Force signals insecurity. Authority signals alignment. Power begins with self-command. Those who cannot govern themselves seek to govern others. Those who govern themselves radiate influence naturally. The self must first learn to obey conscience without negotiation. Every moment conscience is ignored. Authority erodes every moment conscience is honored. Authority consolidates. Power grows from internal loyalty. The self that acts against itself fractures power. Contradiction leaks authority. Integrity seals it. Integrity is coherence over time. Power without integrity collapses. It becomes fear-driven, defensive, reactive. Fear shrinks power. Calm expands it. The self learns that power is not speed. Speed impresses. Consistency persuades. Ends reached slowly stand longer. Authority attracts cooperation. Force breeds resistance. Resistance drains energy. Cooperation multiplies effect. The self that commands itself invites cooperation effortlessly. The self must abandon the fantasy of domination. Domination creates obedience but not loyalty. Loyalty roots power deeply. Deep roots outlast storms. Power requires restraint. Unrestrained strength becomes chaos. Chaos demands external control. True power never requires constant correction. The self that knows power resists the urge to prove it. Proving signals doubt. Doubt evokes challenge. Real authority dissolves challenge quietly. Power matures when the self does not respond to insult reflexively. Reflex reveals ego. Power pauses. Pause introduces choice. Choice affirms command. The self that reacts impulsively broadcasts its weakness. The self that responds deliberately reveals its center. Center stabilizes presence. Presence commands space. Power is the capacity to influence outcomes without emotional expenditure. Emotion exhausted cannot sustain authority. Composed effort endures. The self that fears losing control holds power tightly. Tight grip suffocates. Real power trusts structure. Structure holds without force. Authority grows when promises are kept. Broken promises cost influence. Kept commitments accumulate trust. Trust deepens power. The self that governs itself does not intimidate. Intimidation seeks compliance. Authority earns consent. Consent multiplies reach. Power operates silently when values and action align. Alignment makes behavior predictable. Predictability builds confidence in others. Confidence invites collaboration. The self must learn to tolerate opposition. Opposition tests power. Fragile power reacts. Stable power absorbs. Absorption refines strategy. Power that cannot listen cannot last. Listening gathers intelligence. Intelligence guides action. Informed action strengthens command. The self that mistakes volume for power exhausts itself. Noise attracts attention briefly. Consistency holds attention long term. Holding attention shapes direction. Authority is strengthened not by winning every conflict, but by choosing which conflicts matter. Selective engagement preserves force. Power is weakened by the need to be liked. Popularity is unstable. Respect is durable. Respect grows from reliability. The self that seeks popularity surrenders authority. The self that seeks coherence earns respect. Respect stabilizes influence. Power grows when the self can say no calmly. No without justification. No without aggression. No with clarity. Clarity confirms authority. True power survives silence. It does not require constant validation. Silence often speaks louder than justification. Justification reveals insecurity. The self must learn to act without applause. Applause is external fuel. External fuel exhausts. Internal conviction sustains effort. Authority expands. When the self carries consequence silently. Blame diffuses power. Responsibility concentrates it. The self that avoids responsibility cannot develop authority. Authority is forged under weight. Weight carried steadily builds credibility. Power becomes visible only after it has already formed. Those who chase visibility expose hollowness. Hollowness leaks influence. The self that embodies power does not dominate time. It respects it. Time allies with consistency. Consistency amplifies authority. The self must recognize that real power rarely feels thrilling. It feels grounded. Thrill fades. Grounded strength endures. The self that commands itself naturally commands respect. Respect invites cooperation. Cooperation extends influence. Influence exercised responsibly becomes authority. Power matures when the self no longer confuses intensity with effectiveness. Intensity burns fast. Effectiveness endures. Endurance shapes history more reliably than explosion. The self that seeks dominance advertises weakness. Dominance compensates for lack of inner order. Inner order produces unspoken authority. Unspoken authority reshapes environments quietly. Power grows when the self no longer reacts immediately. Reaction hands control to stimulus. Delayed response reclaims control. Control over response is the core of authority. The self that can wait without anxiety commands direction. Anxious waiting leaks power. Composed waiting strengthens it. Patience is strategic strength. Power becomes trustworthy when it acts predictably. Unpredictable behavior creates fear. Fear erodes loyalty. Predictable integrity cultivates confidence. The self that understands power does not humiliate opposition. Humiliation breeds revenge. Revenge destabilizes order. Dignified restraint neutralizes threat. Stability preserves influence. Authority does not escalate every conflict. Escalation multiplies cost. Selective firmness conserves strength. Choosing calm often wins without struggle. Power accumulates in the ability to bear pressure. Pressure reveals structure. Weak structure collapses. Well-ordered selves remain coherent under stress. The self gains authority by facing difficult conversations without aggression. Aggression triggers defense. Defense blocks persuasion. Clarity disarms resistance. Power that depends on fear requires constant enforcement. Authority based on respect maintains itself. Maintenance saved funds progress. The self that governs itself knows when not to act. Restraint prevents unnecessary conflict. Conflict avoided preserves energy. Preserved energy fuels purpose. Authority is lost, not by admitting error, but by concealing it. Concealment fractures trust. Acknowledgement restores credibility. Credibility anchors power. The self that corrects itself publicly demonstrates integrity. Integrity disarms critics. Disarmed criticism strengthens authority. Power matures when the self refrains from punishment, unless necessary. Punishment signals breakdown of authority. Effective authority rarely needs punishment. Clear expectation prevents deviation. The self learns that power is not isolation. Isolation contracts influence. Connection multiplies it. But connection without boundaries dilutes command. Boundaries clarify roles. Authority emerges when the self consistently honors limits. Limits respected internally are extended externally. Consistency stabilizes order. The self that displays resentment loses authority. Resentment reveals insecurity. Secure power is generous. Generosity disarms rivalry. Power restrained by ethics outlasts unethical strength. Unethical advantage decays trust. Trust once broken rarely recovers fully. The self that listens deeply commands loyalty. Listening signals respect. Respect invites cooperation. Cooperation amplifies action. Authority also requires foresight. Short-term victories can destroy long-term position. Foresight guides restraint. Restraint preserves dominance without force. The self that understands power does not confuse confidence with arrogance. Arrogance isolates. Confidence invites collaboration. Collaboration extends reach. Power strengthens when the self distributes responsibility. Centralized control bottlenecks action. Delegation multiplies effect. Trust empowers others. Empowered others defend authority. The self that hoards control becomes exhausted. Exhaustion weakens leadership. Shared burden sustains endurance. Authority grows when the self acts consistently across situations. Inconsistency destabilizes trust. Trust broken cannot command cooperation. Power is multiplied by the self's ability to integrate dissent. Suppressed dissent festers. Integrated dissent improves system. Improved system extends authority. The self that punishes honesty destroys intelligence. Intelligence fuels strategy. Blind power miscalculates. Miscalculation erodes position. Authority is preserved when the self does not personalize disagreement. Personalization inflames ego. Ego clouds judgment. Clear judgment sustains power. The self that commands respect does not retaliate emotionally. Emotional retaliation degrades dignity. Dignity anchors authority. Power understands timing. Not every truth must be spoken immediately. Premature disclosure destabilizes order. Timed truth preserves cohesion. The self that knows power accepts solitude at moments of decision. Isolation clarifies responsibility. Clarity prevents error. Error under power carries multiplied consequences. Authority matures when the self chooses justice over convenience. Convenience erodes legitimacy. Justice strengthens allegiance. The self that holds power ethically reduces resistance before it begins. Resistance arises when power feels arbitrary. Predictable justice neutralizes defiance. Power is sustained by the self's ability to absorb blame and distribute credit. Blame accepted builds trust. Credit shared builds loyalty. Both strengthen command. The self that constantly defends authority reveals weakness. Authority secure does not require defense. Results speak. Power becomes stable when the self recognizes that permanence is illusion. Change is constant. Adaptive authority survives. Rigid authority collapses. The self that adapts without losing principle retains integrity under transformation. Integrity across change anchors power. Authority is not inherited. It is earned daily. Every choice either compounds it or erodes it. Nothing is neutral where power exists. There comes a moment when the self understands that power is not something it holds. It is something it embodies. When embodiment breaks, power evaporates. The self realizes that authority cannot be demanded. Demand invites resistance. Authority must be recognized. Recognition emerges from consistent alignment between word and act. The self that seeks power for recognition weakens itself. The self that exercises power for responsibility strengthens itself. Responsibility deepens legitimacy. Legitimacy stabilizes influence. Power matures when the self stops measuring itself against rivals. Comparison breeds insecurity. Insecurity leaks authority. Focus on coherence consolidates power internally. The self understands that power exercised reluctantly often carries more weight than power exercised eagerly. Eagerness signals need. Restraint signals control. The self that becomes truly powerful does not surround itself with obedient voices. Obedience without conscience corrupts leadership. Courageous voices refine judgment. Refined judgment preserves authority. Power that allows critique demonstrates confidence. Confidence invites trust. Trust amplifies reach. Reach exercised ethically builds stable influence. The self must accept that power magnifies consequences. Small errors under power become large outcomes. This awareness disciplines behavior. Discipline anchors command. The self that respects consequence acts deliberately. Deliberate action reduces unintended damage. Reduced damage preserves legitimacy. Authority survives when the self separates ego from role. Ego seeks victory. Role requires responsibility. Confusing the two destroys power. The self that protects its ego under the guise of leadership alienates allies. The self that protects integrity under the burden of leadership earns loyalty. Power is quiet when it is secure. Security removes urgency. Urgency distorts judgment. Calm judgment directs action. The self that values authority over admiration chooses long-term stability over short-term applause. Applause fades. Structure remains. Power reaches maturity when the self no longer needs to remind others of its position. Position asserted verbally is position already weakened. Presence confirms role without declaration. The self learns that authority operates best when it is rarely visible. Visibility attracts challenge. Consistency maintains order. Order supports growth. The self that understands power embraces accountability without resentment. Resentment erodes respect. Accountability elevates trust. Trust sustains authority. Power grounded in ethics protects the self from its own corruption. Corruption begins when power excuses itself. Excuse corrodes principles. Principles protect legitimacy. The self that governs itself remains vigilant. Power tempts laziness. Laziness invites decay. Self-governed vigilance preserves coherence. Authority that endures is flexible under pressure and firm under principle. Flexibility manages reality. Firmness preserves identity. Both are required. The self accepts that power exercised well often feels thankless. Gratitude is unreliable. Duty is stable. Those who rely on gratitude abandon authority. Those who rely on duty maintain it. The self that commands ethically does not isolate. It integrates. Integration strengthens systems. Strong systems outlast individuals. Authority embedded in systems survives succession. Power becomes legacy when it produces continuity rather than dependence. Dependence collapses at absence. Continuity sustains order. The self learns that the highest form of power is restraint guided by conscience. Restraint prevents misuse. Conscience directs intent. Intent shapes outcome. The self that restrains itself earns trust invisibly. Invisible trust becomes visible stability. Stability confirms authority. The self now understands that domination was never strength. Strength was coherence. Coherence sustained became authority. Authority exercised with care became power. Power, in its mature form, does not overpower. It orders. It balances. It protects. It builds. It withdraws when necessary. The self that has learned power does not seek control. It ensures integrity. Where integrity stands, power follows naturally. And so the self moves forward, neither submissive nor tyrannical, but centered, able to command, because it has learned how to serve truth first.